So you hear from someone in Atlanta or Chicago or Seattle or any market that's not the Valley or perhaps New York, and he or she says, can I do this? What are, outside of yes, what are some of the warnings or advice you would give to someone in another market?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that we contended with early on was this sort of question of, is it better to be closer to your investors or your customers? Okay, and there's a sort of conventional wisdom was that VCs don't want to travel for their companies, and so that's why you have this nexus of companies in the Valley. The capital is there, and so that a lot of those folks don't want their companies to be close to them. Same thing with New York, and so you have that dynamic, but in the end, investors want to invest in companies that are going to give them a return. And the best way to get a return is to get customers. And so ultimately, it's far better for you to be closer to your customers. If you can create a viable business that is close to your customers, and you can service those customers better, you can grow faster, the capital will follow. The capital is becoming increasingly mobile, and entrepreneurs are becoming increasingly mobile. And the technologies exist to keep tabs on your investments wherever they may be. Now, it's certainly not at the same parity. I mean, I think there are challenges being here in Philadelphia from a capital raising standpoint. There's less competition for deals here, and so consequently, some of the valuations may not be as high. But I think there's other considerations. We don't have to raise as much capital in this market as you would in other markets because our talent's a lot cheaper here. And I think you're going to find the same in other markets as well. So, I think for a lot of people, the considerations really come down to, can you actually build a viable business where you're at? Can you attract the talent that you need to continue to fuel that business? And I think the capital piece of it is really not the first thing you want to be optimizing for. I mean, it seems like it's the hard part in the beginning, but capital just starts the process. The hard part of this is actually building the business. You need to build a business where your business is going to flourish. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
Start with, you mentioned growing a company in India, and I feel like a lot of times we talk nationally alone when we talk about technology hubs and the rise of them. Should we be broadening our perspective and looking at a global conversation? How does that fit into the narrative of new or growing technology communities?
Yeah. Well, I will say the company I built in India was not a traditional technology company. I built what became the second largest pharmacy chain in the country. So we put up 650 physical retail stores in 3 years. Now we built a whole lot of technology to support that, and we had a big software team as a result. But it was a very different business. My belief as an entrepreneur is you go where the opportunities are, and you have an opportunity you're executing against, and the opportunity is best served. You as an entrepreneur are best served where that opportunity is going to flourish. That was an opportunistic company because retail was just starting to flourish in India, and there were basically no branded chains in the country, and there was this great opportunity to lend create quality in the system and lend a trust to that system. So it was a very different business. But I do think that as an entrepreneur and as investors that you do need to think globally, because the world's just becoming a smaller place. It's much easier to actually deploy capital globally, and the reality is there's only so many good deals, and there's a lot of people with capital. So if you want to participate in the conversation and find good opportunities, you have to start looking further and further afield.
In the 90s, we didn't think we had any non-Valley hubs. Now we're silly with them. Every city, every mayor in the country is talking about it. Why?
I mean, I think the big difference is, back in the 90s, we didn't really have the cloud. Okay, we all had to put up servers, right? I mean, I was the first tech company I worked for was a company called WebEx. I was there from very, very early on, all the way through their IPO. So we had racks of servers. We had to build our own room. We had Exodus and all that. I mean, it's crazy infrastructure that you used to have to build back then. Okay, you can't do that in a lot of places. Replicating all of that infrastructure in these massive colo facilities and all of that was a huge amount of money. Now you put everything in the cloud. And so fundamentally what has happened is at least in tech, your entrepreneurs can be super mobile. The cost of creating is dropped significantly, so you just need a lot less capital. If you need a lot less capital, there's a lot more sources of it. It used to be that only a handful of VCs had the capital to take these kind of risks. If you were expecting, essentially 1 in 10 to make it, you were talking about deploying 20 to 30, $40 million just out of 10 companies, and that's not a small amount of cash. Now with $40 million, you can fund, you could potentially fund 80 companies, so the whole world's changed in that way, and so you can put companies in a lot of different places, and you can afford to take those chances. I think that what's going to be interesting is how many of those companies start feeling the pressure as they make it beyond that sort of seed phase to uproot everybody and move. And I think that becomes a real challenge. I see a lot of entrepreneurs feel that compulsion to move. For some of them, it makes sense because their business, part and parcel with making their business survive, they need to be in a different market. But for others, they do it because they feel like they need to do it, not because there's actually a business case to do it. And I think a lot of people just need to be clear about.